I was still in my red wool church coat when my daughter pressed her hand over my plate. "You didn't contribute," Ashley said, loud enough to freeze the room. I'd brought 2 pies and babysat her boys all month, but on Christmas Eve in her North Ridgeville kitchen, she barred me from the ham like I was a stranger. 3 days later, I learned what she meant. A home equity loan I never signed, my name forged under a Medina County notary seal, paying for those gleaming quartz countertops. So I did what a 66-year-old church alto from Lorain County does. I gathered documents, witnesses, certified mail, and my old biscuit tin of receipts and set about taking clean, lawful revenge. Quick pause, subscribe, hit like, and drop your city in the comments so I can say hi next time. I live alone now in a 1-story ranch in Avon Lake, Ohio. My husband, Richard, died 3 winters ago after a steady march of doctor visits and pill organizers. The house sits on a corner lot where the wind from Lake Erie can sand your skin in January. Hydrangeas flop blue in July. I keep a cast iron skillet seasoned like a good hymn, and my pantry holds more canned tomatoes than one woman could ever need. I'm not rich, but the house is paid off, thanks to 30 years as a school secretary who packed lunches and clipped coupons. Ashley is 35, my firstborn, sharp jaw and sharper opinions. She married Eric, a contractor with a white pickup and a company he named after himself, Jansen Remodeling. They bought a 2-story in a development where every mailbox matches, 20 minutes south of me. The kitchen they brag about has an island big enough to wrap a quilt on. I gave them $10,000 toward their down payment when they bought it, because that's what you do when you want your child to have a shot at comfort. I never wrote that check expecting a halo, but I didn't expect to be told I was a freeloader either. This year, Ashley insisted on hosting Christmas Eve. "We'll do a potluck," she texted on December 10th. "Sign up on the app." I don't keep a dozen apps like she does. I wrote back I'd bring 2 pecan pies and a tray of deviled eggs. "We're doing nut-free because of Owen," she shot back. "Owen is my grandson and allergic to everything but air, poor thing." "Okay," I replied, "I'll bring pumpkin and apple instead." She left me on read. The week before Christmas, she asked to borrow my driver's license. For the homestead exemption thing, she said when she came by to drop off the boys. "They need to verify you're still at your address." She had a tote bag on one shoulder and her phone on the other. "I can scan it and upload. The county site is impossible." I don't speak fluent county site, so I handed over my license. "I'll bring it back tomorrow," she promised, sliding it into a side pocket. She also picked up a stack of my mail. "I'll sort this for you, Mom. It's all ads," and tucked it into her tote. I didn't love that, but she's my daughter. I let helpful things happen. I didn't see my license again until December 23rd, when she dropped it on the console table with a breezy, "Done." They were slow, but I handled it. She smelled like hairspray and cinnamon gum. There was a flashy new backsplash of subway tile in her kitchen by then. She'd posted a video, "Kitchen glow up before Santa, wait till you see the island." The comments were thick with hearts. I watched on my couch with a blanket over my knees. Christmas Eve at 6, I drove to her subdivision with 2 pies cooling in the passenger seat and my deviled eggs nested in Tupperware. Snow threatened, but didn't commit. The sky was the color of old pewter. Inside Ashley's house, the air was warm with other people's families. I kissed the boys. I set my pies on the sideboard with the rest. I picked up a plate at the buffet. The ham was glossy, the green beans squeaked under the serving spoon. Eric carved and winked at his friends. Ashley's hand stopped me. It wasn't a shove. It was a flat palm with the power of ownership behind it. "Mom," she said quietly but with enough volume to hush the aunties. "Did you contribute?" I stared at her. The pecan pies were gone, replaced by nut-free bright things. My pumpkin pie sat somewhere behind her elbow. "I brought pies and eggs," I said. She cocked her head. "Money, Mom." "Venmo." We agreed on $50 per adult for groceries. "And for the year." "You know." "For the year," I said, and that's when she delivered her sentence, each word polished. "You didn't contribute to our household this year either." She glanced toward the camera someone had set up to record the reveal of their Christmas charcuterie board. Embarrassment burned my tongue. I set down the plate, left the pies, and walked out with the Tupperware under my arm in a grip that would bruise an apple. In the garage, I fumbled my keys. Eric's voice floated behind me. "Don't make it a thing, May." I made it a quiet exit instead. I drove home and heated a single-serve mac and cheese in the microwave, set it on the counter near the poinsettia I got from the church bazaar, and ate standing up. I put on my flannel nightgown at 8 p.m. and listened to my refrigerator hum like it was keeping a secret. Around 9, my phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. I let it sit. Christmas morning I sang alto at St. Mark's, then made pancakes in my cast-iron skillet. Syrup is a kind of bomb if you let it be. I opened the voicemail after I'd put my plate in the sink. A woman with a practiced comm said she was calling from Lake Erie Federal's Home Equity Line Department to verify a draw request from December 22nd, transferred to Jansen Remodeling LLC. If this was not authorized, please press 1. I stood very still. I didn't have a home equity line. My house was free and clear. I hadn't authorized a thing. The message had been left Christmas Eve. My stomach dropped through my shoes. I pressed 1. The system told me I'd need to call during business hours. I set the phone down, blinked at the small brass rooster magnet that holds my grandson's drawings, and felt a hot little pulse of anger in my throat. "You didn't contribute," Ashley had said. And suddenly I wondered if I had contributed more than she had a right to. That afternoon, I pulled out my biscuit tin of receipts, the one with the picture of a Boston Terrier on the lid, and spread years of paper across my kitchen table. I dug out my property tax bills, last year's bank statements, and a copy of the deed to my house from when Rick and I finally paid it off. I took a photo of my checkbook register like it could testify. Then I went to my computer, opened the county recorder's website, and squinted my way through the search. An open-end mortgage had been recorded against my house on December 21st. The lender? Lake Erie Federal Credit Union. The borrower? Me, spelled correctly. My heart thumped in my ears. I clicked View Image and the PDF bloomed like a bruise. There it was, my name typed, and a signature that looked countrified enough to pass as mine if you didn't know how Myron Richards always hooks low. A notary stamp from Medina County, a place I'd only been through twice, once for a quilting show and once to see the Lodi outlet stores before they closed. The notary's name was Harriet L. The timestamp said 6:48 p.m. on December 20th. My choir rehearsal at St. Mark's had run from 5:30 to 7 p.m. that night. I had a text in our choir group chat of us in Santa hats at 6:51, with me in the back row holding the alto binder like a shield. So how had I also been in Medina County signing away my house? I printed the mortgage and set it next to my choir photo. I pressed both flat with my cast-iron skillet like I was pressing a lily between book pages. Then I pulled up my doorbell camera recordings. On December 18th, there was Ashley on my porch, scooping up my mail with a purposeful sweep, face turned toward the camera, but eyes covered by a knit beanie. She put one envelope in her jacket pocket. I watched her shoulder angle away, watched her press something into that side pocket of her tote where she'd put my license 2 days earlier. I am not a detective, but I am a woman who can tell when her hand mixer's whisk is bent by 1 millimeter. Something was off. I set a little legal pad on the counter and wrote 3 columns: who, what, when. Under who, I wrote Ashley and Eric and Harriet L. Under what, I wrote Hellick, notary, Jansen Remodeling. Under when, I wrote December 18th to 22nd. I underlined what twice. Then I called my son, Michael, in Toledo. Michael is quieter than his sister by 3 octaves. He works IT at a hospital and has a way of letting you tell the whole story before he asks one question that reorients the earth. I told him everything. He whistled low. "Mom," he said, "we need to call the bank fraud unit the minute they open tomorrow." Then, after a pause, "Do you want me to drive in tonight?" "No," I said, looking at the snow starting to lay a clean sheet over my street. "I want you to watch your daughter open her Barbie dream camper in the morning. Call me at 9. He did. Monday at 9:03 a.m. We were on speaker with Lake Erie Federal's fraud department, a man with a careful tone named Nate. He pulled up my account while my coffee went cold. I see a home equity line was opened December 20th, he said, with disbursement on the 22nd. Looks like $38,500 was transferred to Jansen Remodeling LLC via wire. My son-in-law's company, I said, and my voice cracked not because I was old, but because a new part of me had broken open in that moment. Nate went quiet for a second. Mrs. Richards, he said more gently, did you apply for this HELOC? No. Were you present at a closing with a notary on the 20th? No. And I have a picture of myself at choir that minute. I heard his keyboard clatter. Okay, he said. We're going to freeze this line and open a fraud case. I'll email you a declaration to sign. Do you have a trusted person who can help you gather documents? I have a son who asks the right questions, I said, and Michael murmured, I'm here. By 10:30, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Christmas Fraud, and inside it, a scanned copy of the mortgage, my driver's license, my choir photo, and a letter from the county recorder's office I printed that confirmed recordation. I also had an email from Lake Erie Federal with a PDF requesting my signature stating I did not authorize any of this. My hand shook when I signed, not from age but from righteous fury. At 11:15, my doorbell chimed. UPS handed me a certified letter that had missed me on Christmas Eve. It was from Buckeye Title and Escrow, out of Brunswick in Medina County. Enclosed, please find your final settlement package for the home equity line of credit, the letter began. Inside were copy machine bright documents, a HUD, a note, closing instructions. My signature was repeated like a prayer. The closer's name was on a business card stapled to the front. Call me with any questions. I took a photo of the entire pile and emailed it to Nate at the bank, then set it down on my kitchen table like a spread of tarot cards. The future did not look good for someone. I didn't call Ashley. I knew if I heard her voice I would forget how to be strategic and would slide into either crying or shouting. Instead, I made tea, then called the Lorain County Sheriff's non-emergency number. I need to make a report for identity theft, I told the woman who answered. She took my information, and an officer called back that afternoon. He came to my house wearing boots with salt stains and wrote everything down. He gave me a case number on a card I stuck on my fridge under a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Then I called Adult Protective Services. I had been a school secretary long enough to know who to call when a child was hurt. I had to admit I didn't know who to call when the child hurt the parent. APS listened. The social worker, Carla, spoke with me like I was both competent and a person in need of a little shepherding. She told me financial exploitation doesn't always come with bruises, and that the words "you didn't contribute" could be a way of dressing up a theft. Let's make sure you're safe in your home, she said. Let's build a circle around you. The next morning, Carla came by. She drank my coffee and asked to see my paperwork. I showed her the doorbell camera clip of Ashley taking my mail. I showed her the same envelope appearing in my closing packet, my property tax bill, used as proof of address. Carla took notes. Do you have a copy of the notary's journal? She asked. I didn't know notaries had journals. Most do, she said. Ohio requires record keeping. We can request it. Also, that stamp? The commission number will tell us who she is. We leaned over my printer copy. Harriet Long, Carla read. Medina. Carla wrote to the Ohio Secretary of State's office for me and filed an APS report, which meant someone besides me and a bankman in a cubicle knew what had been done. At noon, my phone pinged with an Instagram story, Ashley panning across her island, twinkle lights reflecting off the new quartz. All paid for, not sponsored, just blessed, she had captioned it. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My chest did that tight flutter thing it does when I climb the stairs too fast. Carla saw the phone and lifted one eyebrow. Save that, she said. Screenshots are friends. I slept badly that night with the porch light on like a lighthouse for my own nerves. In the morning, December 27th, I put on my boots and went to the Lorain County Recorder in Elyria. The building smelled like paper and winter. The clerk, a man with librarian patience, showed me how to look up my history. Only the open-end mortgage was new. I asked him what would happen to it. He told me it would stay until the lender released it or a court ordered it otherwise. He gave me a copy with a file stamp to prove it existed. I folded it into my purse like a talisman. On my way home, I stopped by St. Mark's. I asked our choir director, Louise, to send me the raw video she'd taken of us in rehearsal on December 20th. It's mostly altos in the wrong key. She laughed, but I'll drop it in your email. I asked if she'd be willing to write a letter stating that I was present during that time. She patted my shoulder like she had when Rick died and said, of course. That afternoon, Nate from the bank called. Mrs. Richards, he said, we pulled the notary's acknowledgement page and compared it to your signature card on file. They don't match. Also, the notary journal indicates an Ohio driver's license with your number, but a different expiration date was presented. We're moving forward with a reversal and freezing the Jansen account pending our investigation. The word freezing warmed me. Do I need a lawyer? I asked. It might be helpful, he said, but we're going to try to unwind this. I can't give legal advice. I appreciated that even his disclaimers were careful. At 3 o'clock, Carla called. The Secretary of State's office responded, she said. Harriet Long's commission is valid, but her journal shows a line for you at 6:48 p.m. with met at client's location. She wrote home address verified by mail. There's a photo of your license in the file. We'll be requesting her to explain the identification process. I pictured a stranger flicking a flashlight beam over a copy of my life, mistaking my reflection for the real thing. At 5:15, I finally texted Ashley. I missed dinner the other night, I wrote, but I'm hoping we can talk tomorrow at noon. At my house? She wrote back in 1 minute. We're slammed. Kitchen demo is still a mess. Maybe in the new year. I typed and erased, then typed again. It's important. She responded with a thumbs up, reacted to my message, and nothing else. It felt like a joke at my expense. That night, I made soup. Carrots, celery, onion. The miser's trinity. I tore a heel of bread and floated it on top with a slice of cheddar. I ate calmly because I wanted to remember what calm tasted like. Then I pulled out a yellow file folder and wrote on the tab, Ashley. Inside I put printed screenshots of her kitchen posts, all those hearts. Stay till the end, I'll show the truth. December 28th dawned like a slate wiped clean. I decided to pay my own visit to Buckeye Title and Escrow. The address on the letterhead took me past snow-powdered fields to a strip of low buildings in Brunswick. The office smelled like toner and coffee. A woman at the front desk flicked her eyes from her monitor to me and back. I'm here about a closing you handled, I said, and slid the letter across the counter. I didn't attend it. The closer on the card, a pretty woman with acrylic nails red as holly berries, came out from a cubicle. Oh, she said, reading quickly, Mrs. Richards. Yes, we did your helic. Is there an issue? I told her I hadn't been there. Her face did a complicated twitch like a person holding in a burp. Well, she said, our notary handled the off-site signing. We have the documents. Everything looked fine. Who is present? I asked. She glanced back at her screen. It says the signer and her daughter. She said that last word like it might be a grenade. Did you verify the signer? I asked. The notary did, she said. We have a copy of the license. A copy my daughter took, I said. And my mail. I slid a printout of Ashley on my porch across to her. And this? The closer looked at the photo, then at me. Her mouth did a new shape. Let me get my manager, she said. The manager came out, a man in a navy sweater with a haircut that cost more than my coat. He listened. He nodded. We'll cooperate with the bank, he said. If a notary committed an error, there are remedies. He didn't say forgery. He didn't say criminal. He kept to error like a ship hugging shore. I kept to thank you like a woman who knows how to move the needle a millimeter at a time. On the way home, I stopped at the post office and sent a letter certified mail to Ashley and Eric. It was not poetic. It was a demand to cease further use of my identity and to account for any funds received from Lake Erie Federal with a copy of the police case number. I also mailed a copy to Jansen Remodeling's P.O. box addressed to registered agent. There is something satisfyingly old-fashioned about green cards coming back with signatures. It's a record that breathes. Back at my kitchen table, I put everything into 3 binders with tabs: bank, county, family. I slid each page into a protective sleeve. The wrinkling of the binders was a lullaby. I may be 66, but I can still color code like a teacher the week before school starts. At 7 p.m., my phone lit with Ashley's name. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was tight and high. Mom, I don't know what you're doing, but you're scaring the boys. They saw your letter. Eric says you're misunderstanding how equity works. You benefited from our renovations too, if you think about it, because our property value reflects well on the neighborhood. We thought you'd be grateful we finally upgraded that sad kitchen. That sad kitchen. The one where I'd taught her to scramble eggs. I put the phone face down and washed dishes I'd already washed. At 9:12, Eric texted me directly. May, you're blowing this up. The helic is on your house, sure, but we considered it a family investment. We'll pay it back. Relax. He added a thumbs up. The casually cruel punctuation of our time. The next morning, I called the City of North Ridgeville Building Department. Hi, I said, keeping my voice pleasant like church hallway pleasantries. Could you tell me if a remodel permit has been pulled at their address recently? The clerk was helpful. Kitchen build out in December, she said. Electrical and plumbing under Jansen Remodeling. Next inspection scheduled for January 5th. Thank you, I said. Then I called the Lorain County Prosecutor's Victim Advocate line and asked what my next steps should be. The advocate couldn't give me legal advice. She gave me a list of resources and told me I was not overreacting. It was surprising how much I needed to hear that. Later that day, Carla, bless her government issue planner and steady hair clip, brought an APS colleague, a man named Deshawn, to my house. They sat with me at my kitchen table and walked through what support could look like. Do you want to confront your daughter? Carla asked gently. We can be present. I thought about Ashley's face at the buffet line, the satisfaction tucked under her cheekbones. Yes, I said, but on my terms. We set a meeting for December 30th at my house at 10 a.m. Carla said she'd invite a representative from Lake Erie Federal to attend by phone and that she'd notify a detective from the sheriff's office to be available if needed. We're not going to surprise them, she said. We'll just gather facts. Facts were my favorite kind of company that week. I wrote 10 a.m. truth in my planner. The evening of the 29th, I baked a lemon loaf. The smell filled my house with something like forward motion. I laid out the binders on the table and put a sticky note on each section. Bank, wire to Jansen. County, Medina Notary versus Choir timestamp. Family, doorbell clip, IG kitchen video. I slept better. At 9:58 on December 30th, Ashley and Eric walked into my kitchen smelling like cologne and irritation. Ashley's jaw moved like she was chewing gum she couldn't taste. Eric wore a black jacket and a look he probably used on subcontractors who forgot their tape measures. Carla and Deshawn were already there, their notepads present but not insulting. My cast iron sat on the stove warm from the lemon loaf I'd sliced and put on a plate because I was raised right. Mom, Ashley started, I can't believe you got strangers involved. These strangers, I said evenly, care about older adults not getting their houses stolen from under them. Eric snorted. No one stole anything, he said. It's a line of credit, May. Carla held up a hand like a conductor asking the brass to wait. We're here for clarity, she said. Mrs. Richards has concerns. I slid the bank binder across to Ashley. She didn't touch it. Eric pulled it toward him and flipped. When he saw the wire printout, his eyebrows did a little up-down. This is all paperwork, he said. May, it's not like we forged anything. You did, I said calmly, flipping my own copy of the mortgage acknowledgement to the signature page. This is not my signature. And if it were, I would remember meeting a notary in Medina County at 6:48 p.m. on December 20th. I was singing O Come, Emmanuel off-key with my alto section at exactly 6:51. I slid the choir photo across. Ashley rolled her eyes. Mom, she said, you don't even know how to use the county website. We just helped move things along. By taking my driver's license, I said, and slid the doorbell camera still toward her. Ashley's face in knit hat, hand in my mail. She didn't look at the picture. You said I could get the homestead thing done, she said. I returned it. Eric jumped in. May, if we're going to get technical, the notary verified the signer. That's on them. We just arranged. And the helic is an asset. You'll still have your house. Relax. He sat back, satisfied with the shape of his argument. Mr. and Mrs. Jansen, Carla said gently, were also joined by Nate from Lake Erie Federal on the phone. She tapped her screen. Nate's voice came through, mild as tea. Good morning. Eric stiffened. Ashley glanced at me with a look that said, You dare. I did dare. Nate explained what the bank had done so far: freeze, investigation, cross-checking of signatures, request to the title company for the notary journal. He asked a few very straight questions. Mrs. Jansen, he said, were you present at the closing? Did you present any identification on behalf of your mother? Ashley paused too long. I'm not a notary, she said finally. I'm her daughter. We appreciate that, Nate said. But we need a yes or no. Carla made a note with a soft scratch of pen. Eric leaned forward. This feels like an ambush, he said. We thought this was a family conversation. It is, I said, with the addition of the people who safeguard families when money gets confused. Ashley's eyes filled for a flicker, and then she hardened. You have always made me feel like I owe you, she said. I had 2 kids young, I used hand-me-downs, I never got help like other people do. This year, we decided to take what was due. We're your family. You're not going to miss it. There it was. The quiet confession tucked into complaint. Carla lifted her gaze. Deshawn underlined something. Due. I repeated. Due from a woman who changed your diapers and bought you cleats and gave you $10,000 for that house? Due from a woman you told couldn't eat on Christmas Eve because she didn't contribute after you used her house to finance yours. My voice didn't shake. It resonated like a note held long enough to change a room. Eric stood. We're done, he said. May, drop the bank thing. We'll make monthly payments. We have jobs. It's not like we're criminals. The word hung there, trying to turn itself into a coat that wouldn't fit. Mr. Jansen, Nate said smoothly from the speaker, your business account at Lake Erie Federal is currently under a hold pending our investigation. We will be coordinating with law enforcement. This call is being recorded. Eric's face changed. The corners of his mouth twitched inwards like he'd tasted something that had turned. Ashley went pale. You told the bank to freeze our account, she said to me, as if I'd turned a hose on her new rug. The bank did that, I replied, after I told them I didn't authorize you to take my house to the bank like a piggy bank. And APS is here because I am 66 and this is what exploitation looks like, even when it's done with manicures and a pretty apron. Ashley cried then, quietly. Eric didn't put a hand on her. He stared at the binder as if willing it to shut itself. Carla slid a tissue across the table. We can make a plan, she said to Ashley. But it starts with stopping the we deserved it language. We're talking about consent and property. Eric pulled out his phone. He started typing with rapid stabs of his thumb. Carla shook her head. I'm going to ask you not to threaten anyone by text, she said softly. We're all witnesses now. He swallowed. We ended the meeting with a list. Ashley and Eric would provide a written account of the closing they attended. Buckeye Title would be notified, already was. The bank would proceed. APS would file its report. I didn't hug my daughter. I walked them to the door and watched the back of their coats like a docent at a museum I didn't want to be in anymore. When the door shut, I turned, put both hands on my kitchen table, and breathed in the smell of lemon and fear turning into something else, resolve. At 2 o'clock, Nate called back. Mrs. Richards, he said, the title company is tendering their claim to their insurer. They're also forwarding the notary's bond information. We're going to reverse the wire. It will take a few days. The line will be closed. The open-end mortgage will be released once we finalize. You'll get a copy. He sounded almost proud, like a coach reporting that the team had run the play we practiced. I thanked him, then called the North Ridgeville Building Department again. Is it possible to place a hold on a permit if the funding is under investigation? I asked. The clerk put me on hold and came back saying the inspector could issue a stop work order if there were concerns about payment or licensure. We don't get into family disputes, she said, but we enforce our rules. I understand, I said. I just don't want to see work proceed on a kitchen built on my house. The clerk was quiet a second, then said, we'll note the file. That evening, I went to my quilting circle in the church basement. The fluorescent lights made everyone look a little tired, but the gossip was bright. I told them a version of what had happened, leaving out names. She told me I didn't contribute, I said, cutting along my rotary mat. Teresa, who taught me how to scallop a border, put her palm flat on her heart. Well, she said, we'll contribute a casserole to you tonight. They sent me home with 2 foil-covered miracles, chicken divan and scalloped potatoes. I ate at my small oak table listening to the quiet knock of the wall clock and wrote in my spiral, revenge, lawful, kind to myself, clear. The plan took shape under that line like a pattern emerging from small squares. The first part of it was simple. I told the truth to the right people. The second part would be public. On New Year's Eve, our church usually held a potluck for the older folks whose driving after dark had a sunset curfew. This year, Louise asked if I'd help organize. We don't want anyone alone, she said. I made a flyer on my computer with clip art of a steaming bowl and the heading, Nobody Eats Alone. I posted it to the Avon Lake Community Facebook page. My post read, if anyone was told they didn't contribute enough to be welcome this holiday, you can come sit at my table. Bring nothing but yourself. It took 2 minutes for the comments to fill. I've got mac and cheese. I can bring meatballs. I'll sit beside you, May. You don't realize how hungry a neighborhood is for kindness until you open your door. At 4 p.m., when the sun still pretended it hadn't retired, I propped our church fellowship hall doors open. People came with crockpots and paper plates. We drank punch from a crystal bowl that had seen more baptisms than New Year's. Louise let us in Auld Lang Syne at 6 because some of us go to bed at 9. I went home afterward with my coat smelling like 100 casseroles. I put my leftovers on my counter and smiled at the sight of abundance that didn't come with a price tag. As I was putting the spinach dip away, my phone buzzed. A message from Ashley, real classy mom. She'd seen the post. I was ready for anger. Instead, I felt something like pity. Pity for a person who would rather starve her mother than feed a little part of her own pride. The first week of January moved like a snowplow. Slow, deliberate, clearing. The bank reversed the wire. The title company called. We're issuing a release of mortgage. You'll get it by certified mail. The notary, Harriet Long, resigned her commission pending investigation. The county recorder emailed me a link. There it was, the release, my house unshackled on a gray browser screen. I printed it and slid it into the county binder, the sound of the plastic sleeve sighing like relief. And then I started on the last part of my revenge. I had a will from before Rick died and a trust we never got around to fully funding. On January 7th, I made an appointment with an estate attorney in downtown Elyria named Ms. Patel. She wore flats and a smile that said she'd seen worse. I told her my story. I told her I wanted to protect my house in a way that would never allow an off-site signing again. I told her I wanted to make sure my grandchildren were cared for, but that any adult child who used my name like a debit card would not inherit my home. She nodded and wrote, and then she drafted a living trust with one special condition, a gift for Ashley's boys to be managed by a third party, but for Ashley herself. Nothing unless she completed financial counseling and made full restitution of any loss caused or attempted. I signed it with witnesses and left the office with a folder as crisp as a new dollar bill. That night, I typed a letter to Ashley. It wasn't written to punish. It was written like an obituary for a way of being. I said that I loved her. I said that trust was like a quilt. It took forever to make and could be ruined in an hour with dull scissors. I said that my estate plan had changed for my own protection and peace. I said that when she was ready to own what she'd done without excuses, I'd be there with a chair at my table. I sent it certified mail and sat at my kitchen counter swirling a cup of tea, steam fogging my glasses. 2 days later, a white paper taped to Ashley's front door appeared on her Instagram story for exactly 20 minutes before she deleted it. I had a screenshot by then. Stop work order, it read, in city block letters. Permits temporarily suspended pending documentation. The comments that flooded her now empty post were the kind that start rubbernecking. I didn't write a single one. On January 12th, Eric's business page for Jansen Remodeling updated with a note. We are taking a brief pause to reorganize. The bank had unfrozen his account once the wire reversal settled, but the pause had other reasons. The Ohio Attorney General's Consumer Division had opened a mediation file after my complaint. The notary board had questions about a meat signer at residence, procedure that used someone else's mail. The world was not ending around them. It was simply holding them accountable, which can feel like an earthquake when you're used to rooms rearranging for you. By the second week, I could make eggs in my cast iron without my hands shaking. I went to choir practice and sang harmony like a person whose voice had come back. The hydrangeas in my front yard were dead sticks in January, but I knew where their roots were. I knew they'd bloom blue again because that's what roots do when the ground is honest. Keep watching, there will be justice. On January 14th, my doorbell rang. I paused my sewing machine. I was etching a baby quilt for a neighbor's granddaughter and looked through the peephole. Ashley stood there without makeup, hair back in a rubber band. She held no camera. I opened the door and the cold rushed in like a scolding ant. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She sat at my table, and I set 2 mugs out like a reflex I couldn't shake even if I wanted to. "Mom," she said, taking off her gloves, "you've made this really hard." "Did I?" I asked. "Or did you?" She looked at the lemon loaf plate on the counter like it might answer. "Eric says you've ruined his reputation." "Eric's reputation will be what Eric's actions make it," I said. "Mine too." She swallowed. "I was angry at you," she said, quieter. "After Dad died, it felt like you poured yourself into everyone at church and your little hobbies, but not into us. I know that's not fair. I just wanted our house to feel like we were moving up. I wanted a place you'd be proud to come to." "You blocked me from the ham," I said. "You told me I didn't contribute." She flinched. "I was wrong," she said. The words sounded like they'd been dragged rough through her throat. "And the Helic," I said. She nodded, eyes shiny. "Eric said it was no big deal. He said we had a right as family. He said he'd handle it. I didn't want to ask you for a check and have you say no. I knew you'd say no. So I said yes for you." She lifted her head and met my eyes. "I know that is not how adults treat each other. I know that now." The now hung there, asking to be true later. "Do you know I called APS?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Carla made me feel like I was 10. "Maybe a part of you was 10, I said, stomping in my kitchen using my license like it was your Spice Girls CD. She laughed once, a watery syllable. We sat in the new quiet that comes after the hard thing is named. "Mom," she said finally, "what can I do?" I thought about my binders and my cast iron and my lemon loaf, all the tools I'd used to fashion this small justice. "You can pay for your kitchen with your own money," I said. "You can take a financial counseling course and send me the certificate when you're done. You can apologize, mean it, to the bank and the title company and to me. You can tell your boys what honesty means when they ask why the kitchen's not finished yet. You can promise you'll never use my name without my say-so again, and then you can keep that promise every day until I die." She looked down at her hands like she was reading a map drawn in freckles. "Okay," she said. "I can do that." We drank our tea. She took a slice of lemon loaf home in a napkin like a remnant of the life we might return to. I didn't post about her visit. I posted a photo of my sewing machine with the caption, "Stitch by stitch." I'm not a cryptic poster, but the women who know knew. On January 16th, I met with Ms. Patel again to sign a deed transferring my house into my new living trust. "This will make it harder for anyone to record something without your trustee knowing," she said. "It's not a magic shield, but it's another layer of do it right." I named Michael as my successor trustee. He wept a little in the hallway after, his forehead briefly touching mine like when he was 5 and came home with a skin knee from T-ball. The same day, the notary board called me. "We've concluded our investigation into Ms. Long," the woman said. "She failed to properly identify the signer and did not record witnesses for the off-site signing as required by her employer's policy. Her commission is revoked effective immediately. She will be referred to the county prosecutor for review." I thanked her and hung up. I did not rejoice. I set the phone down and looked out at my hydrangea sticks and thought of a woman sitting at her own kitchen table in Medina County, staring at a letter that said she'd lost a credential for failing to be careful. I hoped she learned to love details. On January 18th, Lake Erie Federal sent me a letter embossed with their logo and relief pressed into the paper. The home equity line was closed as fraudulent, the wire reversed, the open-end mortgage released. The incident reported to appropriate authorities. They apologized for any inconvenience this may have caused. I framed that letter and put it in my office where Rick's fish used to hang. It wasn't art, but it was beautiful. Eric called me on January 20th. May, he said without pleasantry, we can't pull permits until we clear the stop work. This is bad for business. Eric, I said, this is an opportunity to learn that business runs on ethics. It is not a punishment. It is a lesson. He breathed into the phone like a dragon prepping for a puff. I could sue for defamation, he said. For what you posted about us. I laughed. Find the post, I said. Find one place I wrote your name. Silence. Fix your house with your money, I said, and hung up because even at 66 you can choose your own ending to a phone call. On January 22nd, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove to Ashley's house with a bag of groceries, eggs, butter, milk, stew meat, frozen peas, the staples that make a power outage survivable. I rang the bell, and she answered with a baby on her hip, Owen, still allergic to joy but smiling at me anyway. This isn't a Christmas dinner, I said. This is just food. She nodded. Can I at least make you eggs? She asked, small in her voice. Maybe next time, I said, meaning it. That night, I found a direct message in my Facebook inbox from a woman I didn't know. My daughter pulled something similar, she wrote. I thought I was the only one. I wrote back, you're not. We traded 3 messages and a recipe for chicken divan. Community is a quilt too. The legal pieces worked their way through January like molasses, not fast, but steady. The county prosecutor took a statement from me. APS closed their case, with supports, after Ashley signed an agreement not to access my accounts and to complete counseling. The title insurer paid out a claim to the bank for the hours of unwinding, and the bank closed the file. All along, I kept my binders updated. The plastic page protectors squeaked a little less each time I slid a document in, like the sound of a burden getting lighter. And then, February brought a small gust of mercy. Our choir performed at the winter service, and after we sang, I walked into the fellowship hall and found a table set with a cloth like my mother used to iron on Sundays. On it sat a ham, glazed and patiently waiting, and next to it a handwritten sign in loopy script. If you didn't bring anything, please eat the most. I laughed so hard I had to pull a tissue from my sleeve. Louise squeezed my shoulder. We contribute by showing up, she said. I took a slice of ham thick as consequences and chewed slowly, savoring salt and justice. On February 10th, Ashley texted me a photo, a certificate of completion from a financial counseling course at the community college. Step 1, she wrote. I replied with a thumbs up, my first of the saga, and then typed, proud of you. She responded with a heart. Words were small rope bridges, but we had to start somewhere. 2 days later, Eric called. May, he said, like the word hurt his mouth less now, we got the stop work lifted after we showed proof of funds. Loan from my line of credit. He paused. I'm sorry. The words were not decorated. For taking without asking. For the thing at Christmas. I sat in my sunny kitchen and listened. Thank you, I said. I accept your apology. Please don't ever talk to me about relaxing again when it comes to my name. He half laughed. A tired little sound. Fair. The kitchen passed inspection on the 15th. Ashley sent me a picture of the quartz after the installer buffed it. Paid in full, she captioned, just for me. Later that afternoon, I drove over with a bow, not for the island, but for the kids' Lego bins I'd found on sale. We're teaching honesty. It helps to give small hands something to build. Don't click away, he'll get what's coming. Because while my main goal had been to get my house unfettered and my dignity restored, there was one more spool of thread I needed to snip clean. At the bottom of my Buckeye title packet was a little note. Closer, Allison S. She had been polite to me. She'd said error instead of crime. I understood why. People protect their livelihoods. But the thing about being 66 is you build a relationship with names. You learn which names you can trust to open a door without checking what's behind it, and which names you can call when explaining something complicated. I wanted the record to reflect the complication. I wrote a letter to Buckeye Title Certified. I thanked them for their cooperation. I asked them to retrain their staff on off-site signings for elderly clients. I included a list of recommendations from APS and the bank, things like always confirm by phone with the property owner using a number on file with the county tax records and photograph the signer with ID when off-site. I printed 5 copies and sent them, one to Buckeye's manager, one to their regional office, one to the Ohio Land Title Association, one to the Secretary of State, and one to my own file. If my revenge had a soundtrack, it would be the thunk of green cards returned and stapled. A week later, Buckeye's manager called me. "We're implementing those suggestions," he said. "We're also requiring 2-factor verification for any off-site closing over $10,000. He paused. "We're sorry, Mrs. Richards. For our part." I thanked him and set the handset down like I was putting a baby to sleep. Then I wrote "done" in the margin of my spiral and underlined it twice. In March, the snow receded to reveal old grass and the promise of muddy shoes. I started seeds in my window. Ashley came over on a Tuesday with Owen while Tyler was at preschool. She sat on the couch and asked if she could hum while I sewed like she used to when she was little and I made her dresses. "Hum away," I said, and she did, a nonsense tune that braided itself around the sound of my machine. We didn't talk about December. We talked about how Owen was learning to say spatula. When she left, she stood on the porch a beat too long. "Thank you," she said, "for not closing the door." I nodded. "Doors are easier to open when hinges are oiled," I said. "We're both doing the work." The summer came, and with it hydrangeas blue as lake glass. In June, the boys ran through my sprinkler while I made lemonade with too much sugar. Ashley came by in denim shorts, hair in a mom bun, and asked if she could bring the macaroni salad to the 4th cookout. "You don't have to," I said, teasing. She grinned. "I want to contribute." We both laughed, a clean sound. In August, I went to the county fair with my quilting friends and won a blue ribbon for a log cabin quilt I'd stitched during long winter nights when I needed my hands to believe in making again. On the way home, I passed a house with a for sale sign announcing Open House Sunday. The address tugged at me. It was near Ashley's. I drove past on Sunday to see the balloons bobbing. The listing boasted newly remodeled kitchen by Jansen Remodeling. The island was gleaming. People went in and out smiling. I parked and stood across the street for a moment, sipping my to-go coffee, and thought, we all carry our lessons into our next rooms. Then, on a Tuesday in September, I got a letter from the prosecutor's office. It said, in the dry language of law, that the case concerning fraudulent use of my identity had been resolved through a diversion agreement. The participant, unnamed, but we know, had completed counseling, paid a fine, and made amends. The file would close with no charges if all conditions were met. I put the letter in my binder and then took the binder off the table and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. I closed the drawer. The click sang. Here's what revenge looked like for me in the end. It looked like eating ham at a table where everyone was invited. It looked like binders and banks and APS workers with sensible shoes. It looked like a daughter sitting at a kitchen table, rubber band in her hair, saying words she didn't say in December. It looked like a notary learning the difference between a copy and a person. It looked like a title company retraining so the next mother wouldn't have to choose between pride and paperwork. And it looked like a living trust written in clear letters so that when I go, my grandsons can read more than numbers on a page. They can read the story I stitched one winter when their grandmother refused to be told she hadn't contributed. If you are a woman somewhere between 50 and 80 and you are told you don't contribute because you didn't transfer money you never agreed to, listen to me. You contribute every time you keep a roof sound and a skillet seasoned. You contribute every time you clip a recipe to feed the neighbor whose husband is in the hospital. You contribute when you say no, with a steady voice, and write your name only on the lines that are yours. You are not being difficult. You are being a good steward of your life. I still keep my biscuit tin of receipts on the top shelf of my pantry, next to the jar where I keep spare buttons and old communion bulletins. I hope I never have to take the binders out of the desk again. But if I do, I know how they sound when they open. It's the sound of a woman holding her ground. And, because the internet has a long memory, I'll end with this. This is my personal experience, shared for awareness and, I hope, A bit of entertainment on a tough topic. No legal advice. Just one lady in Ohio with a stubborn alto and a trust that finally lives up to its name.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.